everyone, it's Joanne here. You probably don't recognise me because I'm going greyer and greyer as the days go on during this lockdown. But hey ho, I'm going for it. Anyway, today's lesson we're going to be looking at monochromatic painting, and if you are serious about taking your watercolours to the next level, then this is something you really should practice. I wasn't born being able to paint. I was a terrible painter. And I could never understand value and colour. It kind of really confused me. So what I did was I put my colours to one side and I spent months and months and months concentrating on just value, using charcoal, using pencil and using paint to get to understand value and how important it is. Now I love colour. I absolutely love colour, but value is also really important. And the lights and the the lights and the mids and the darks are what creates a picture, what gives it kind of strength. And that's what we're looking for. We're also going to be doing this in line and wash as well. But you can do it with just a pencil if you like. You don't really need to include the line. The photograph we're going to be using, I'm going to be showing you in a little bit, is really important as well. It's a little photograph that I took on a recent walk in Mosley Village. And it's important because of the simplification aspect. So you'll look at the photograph and then you'll look at my painting and you'll see how I've managed to simplify the scene. And again, that is really important, isn't it? Simplifying something, breaking it down to its kind of basic terms. So that's a lot of waffle and talk, isn't it? Shall we crack on? I'll see you in the studio. So let's get started on a line and wash monochromatic painting. I'll just go through the materials with you quickly. I'm using a Saunders Waterford knot paper, and it's £140, and it's actually on a block. You can see, by the way, that I've taped it down. That's because I'm thinking about how I want my composition to look, and it's worthwhile considering that yourself. It would look nice square, it would look nice landscape. I've actually created a landscape, but I've kind of brought it in a little bit as well. So I've got a longer landscape. And actually these little bits of paper are really handy for testing your paint on as well. Obviously I've got nice clean water. I'm using a size 8 and a size 12 brush. I'm using one colour, just one colour. You can use any colour as long as it's a dark colour. Burnt umber's really nice as well, a Payne's grey. I'm using actually a Prussian just because I felt like it today. But any dark colour, if you use a light colour, you won't be able to achieve the values that you're looking for. So a nice dark colour. Excuse me, pen wise, you could use just a normal, I use this a lot. This is the Uni pen, a size 0.8 nib. I use that quite a lot for any line and wash that I'm doing. But what I thought today is I'll have a go with my Confucius Feud, which is basically an ink pen. And it's one that you unscrew the top and there's a little barrel inside and you put the ink in and then screw it back together again. And it's a lovely pen. It's got a beautiful nib on it and it should create a lovely kind of quality of line. So you can just about see I've got the drawing down and I've just kind of simplified it really. I've got less foreground. I want to make a feature of this left-hand tree here. But apart from that, we've just got nice simple shapes, distant trees, the suggestion of a church and a couple of buildings. And really we're good to go. So don't spend too long on your drawing, by the way, because I know what that feels like when you spend forever doing a drawing and then you get really nervous when it comes to painting. So keep it nice and simple. Let the pen do the talking and not the pencil. Okay, so we'll start, I think I'll start with this point here, which is the church. I'm just going to test my pen first. There we go. You can see that lovely line it creates. Make sure my hand's nice and clean. They're never nice and clean, by the way, because I paint every day, so they're an absolute disgrace, especially now it's locked down, no manicures, no nothing, so I'm not very happy about that, but that's the way it goes. So we'll start at the top and we'll bring this line down, and you'll see as the drawing progresses, I kind of like a wonky, wobbly line. I'm not one for ruled lines at all. So just a little bit of a wobble on my drawing here. And I try and lift my hand as well off the paper. Sometimes I have to rest it there, but you do get a nicer quality of line if you're lifting your arm away from the paper. There we go, that's as simple as it's going to get. A nice little suggestion of the church. Let's come in now and start to think about these lovely distant trees over here. So we'll start to put the main trunks in of those. And we can make them a bit thicker later on. Let's just get that drawing down. And you can see here, probably can't, I've just drawn a semicircle here because that little semicircle is telling me where my trees are going to stop. So it's a handy little tip that actually, because then you can take the smaller lines up to reach that point. I'm definitely going to make some of these branches a little bit thicker later on. But for now, let's just kind of get the gist of those shapes. And then we kind of come into some foliagey shapes. So we'll just bring in these lovely curly shapes down. And here is where we're going to put our horizon line. Now you can change things around as well. It'd be nice to have maybe a suggestion of some little fence posts perhaps in our foreground. Maybe a few kind of rickety broken ones. I'm going to put some more shapes here that represent just nice bush shapes. You can see I'm not going to a lot of detail here. I'm just trying to keep it nice and fluid and let the pen do the talking and have kind of an even flow of line. So there's a little chimney off some building and then it kind of connects to a bit of a shrub here. It's a very dark photograph that I'm using. So in a way, I kind of like that because I can't really see any details, and neither will you if you're using this reference photograph. Don't panic about that. It means you can use your imagination. There we go. Let's bob a window in there as well, and let's connect to shape. Let's put some nice little bush shapes in front of that. Maybe a window here. Maybe a little window here. The rule of 3 is always lovely. Some nice little squiggly marks, just taking you across to that horizon line. Another nice little kind of building shape here. Now what we'll do is we'll continue through here. So just a few little shapes, maybe some suggestions of trees that are further away. Let's make your drawing nice and loose. Don't get bogged down with those details. I can see I'm fiddling in this area now, so I'll come away from that. It's a bit tricky here now because we want to put the tree in, and if you're using a pen like mine, you'll find that quite difficult because you want to lean here and you don't want to disturb this wash. What you could do is just to take a piece of paper and we'll just bob that maybe here. So that means we've got a nice clean resting space as well. So we'll start to suggest that tree and look at those gorgeous wibbly wobbly linear marks that we're making. Just keep it going, keep that pen moving on that paper. I think I've heard it described before now as taking that line for a wash, and I kind of like that expression because that's exactly what we're doing, isn't it? We're taking that line, moving it around. I'm trying not to take my pen off the paper as well. That's always nice, because if you keep taking it off and going back to it again, your drawing will become a little bit rigid. So try and keep it on the paper. Again, just the basic shapes for now. We can come back and add lots of smaller little branches later on. Just the main ones. And unless you're tracing the tree, you're never going to get it exactly the same. Who's going to know? I won't tell. There we go. Oh, another nice little and the branch shape here. Just pull that across a bit so we can continue that line. Maybe something like that. Actually, that's quite nice because it's kind of bringing you into the church, isn't it, as well? A nice kind of stage curtain. Da, 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 da. Lovely tree, bringing you into your scrummy, gorgeous landscape. Let's take that off for now. So, yes, now I'd like to do a little bit of tidying up as well. So perhaps you might want to kind of strengthen some of these tree shapes over here. You can just put wibbly wobbly lines on because it actually looks, although it's kind of got ivy and things growing on it as well. That's nice. We could put a bit of value in as well, couldn't we? So we could kind of gently cross-hatch into some of these areas. You can also do that in your foliage as well, in your little shrubs and bushes that are down here. Notice I'm taking my line in the kind of same direction. So if I darken this, it's kind of coming across. Maybe a bit darker here. Who knows what's going on there? Let's leave things to the imagination. Let's darken that roof down this side. Maybe a few more suggestions of little posts. And I think it's time now to go for a cup of tea and come back when this is nice and dry and start to think about how we can build on it. I certainly see more going on here, but I think it's cup of tea time, let the ink dry, and then we can put a few final details in there before we start to paint. Right, I've had my cup of tea and just come back to this now, and I'd like to definitely introduce a little bit more oomph into the tree shape. So remember the cross hatching we did? We can actually do that on our tree shape as well. Very gently, you don't want to overdo that. Just in case it's damp. You never know with ink, it can take quite a bit to dry. Just pushing that ink up into those branches. And then I'm going to kind of squiggle my brush about and make some of these branches a lot thicker in value. And maybe introduce a few smaller kind of curly ones. Remember that they're thicker and they go thinner and thinner. Give it some character. That's what we're looking to do here, isn't it? Give our tree a little bit of love and respect. Nice curly shapes. Maybe a few little kind of dotty marks to suggest some of those wintry leaves. Now, do we think that's enough? We always need someone on our shoulder to say, stop, stop. So yes, I'll stop at that point. I think what might be nice, apart from a few other little tiny details you might want to add, is a kind of lead into your picture. I mean, this is a very loose, rough sketch, but it deserves a lead in. And you can see from the photograph that there isn't a lead in at all. So we'll make our own. And actually, where I've put this little gate's quite ideal because we can kind of just suggest maybe this little pathway, just a few little marks like that. Maybe attach some grass onto that. And I think our little sketch is done. For me, a good line and wash is a good balance, a nice combination of linear marks, line, and the watercolour washes we're going to apply. I don't think any one of those should try and compete with one another. They need to work together in a harmonious way. So she says, putting the pen down, the less drawing you do, the better, because now it's time to let this thoroughly dry. You could add wax at this stage as well, or perhaps wait for it to dry if you want to create some highlights. You know I'm a big fan of wax. I don't think I'm going to bother with this one, but it's got to completely dry before we start to apply our washes, or you're going to find big areas of black ink are going to kind of run where you don't want them to. So be patient if you're using a pen like mine and let it dry. If you're using a normal drawing pen like this, it shouldn't take too long, but you know, you can test it with the palm of your hand. Okay, so our little line drawing is now dry and it's time to put on some washes. And let's just chat about that for a second, because when we put the washes on, what we're trying to do is preserve a light, if you like, where the light's coming from. And you can see that when I did my cross hatching, or hatching shall I say, I left certain areas light, which would suggest the light is coming from this direction. It's always important to kind of know that. Let's start to mix a bit of colour. I think we'll go for quite a dramatic sky. So let's just run a really dark colour. I felt you jump then when I did that. It is dark, I know it's dark. But remember, watercolour always dries lighter. Excuse me, so if it's right when it's down, it's actually wrong, because it just dries so much lighter than you think. So shock yourself, make yourself jump out of your seat when you're putting these washes in. Try there just to keep that light if I can. You know what we're going to be doing in a minute, don't you? We're going to be lifting our board and moving it around so we can have an even distribution of paint. Again, trying to keep those lights if I can. I'll try and go around that area as well. It doesn't matter if I make too many mistakes. I think what's important is getting this wash to flow. You can see here there's a great deal of paint on that. So with that in mind, let's put some more water here and here. I'm going to let that flow. So I'm going to tip my board or my paper, my block, in the direction that I want that to go. So I'm just giving it a nice tip. Maybe letting that dark flow down into this area. I mean, at this stage, you can always come in and put a little bit more in there as well. Always lots of water. Let's move it this way. And you see the paint just moving along the paper. I can see little areas that I've missed, but I'm not going to let that concern me too much. Now my board is kind of upside down because I want this wash to run all the way down to the bottom if possible. I can see little bits of paint here, just a thirsty brush just to pull those away so they don't run back on us. Do we dare tip it back? Yeah, I have mentioned this before actually in the last demonstration I did, that the watercolour washes landscape. If you just leave your board to sit like that with the wash on and don't move it, it's just not going to happen for you. You really do need to move that paint around yourself. Just add a little bit more on this side where I've missed. So we don't really have to wait for that to dry. We can start to put in a bit more value now. So the same value really that I put in for the sky, we're going to darken some of these buildings using a nice big brush, so that stops me from fiddling too much. There we go. Yeah, go on then, we'll put a little bit into the rooftop as well. So we'll keep those buildings, or the side of those buildings, light. Let's take some more wash. And let's start to suggest these shrubs and bushes. So I'm going to take a really dark paint and take it all the way along, maybe to this section, maybe a bit here and a bit here. Cleaning my brush. I'm just going to squeeze a bit of excess moisture out of that, so it's a nice wet brush. So I'm just pushing the paint around and letting it blend together. There we go. And we can carry that on all the way through. So just that dark paint, pushing that in. But we didn't even need to wet that bit, did we? Okay, just a few little suggestions of value here as well. And again, we'll stop at that point. Let's think about this area now. If you think about it, we're not putting any kind of detail at this stage. We're just blocking colour in. So I'll just take a nice light wash. And this, of course, will run because that section is wet. You can be extra cautious and you can let it dry, of course. I'm not suggesting that you paint it while it's wet, but I kind of like to. So there we've created a little pathway, and I'm going to put a little bit more value into this foreground. Just a smidge. There we go. Now, there does come a time when we need to say, stop. Because the paper is so wet now, we can't afford to put another mark on it until it's totally dry. And like me, you'll have a few things that are annoying, you know, little bits that we've missed here, little bits here that we missed with the sky wash. Don't be tempted to go back in with that brush and start to fix that. You're not going to be able to do it. You're going to make a mess. So please, just be patient, let your picture dry, and let's see how we can sort out these little issues that you may have as well. So we're nice and dry. Let's start to put in a few details. Let's think about this tree shape and how we can enhance that a little bit. I like to kind of use my brush to suggest the tops of trees and branches. But obviously we've got the line there as well, so we don't want it to compete with that. So we're just going to lay a very simple wash. And can you see what I'm doing here? I'm pushing my brush into the paper. It's not a great way to treat a brush, by the way. But there we go. So kind of splitting all the hairs here. Splitting hairs, there we go. So I can kind of do that, can't I? And suggest the tops of those trees. So let's put that into practice, and let's just pull that wash down. Maybe it's a little bit dry. Test it first. There we go. Just pulling those little textured brush marks down into our tree. A little bit here as well. We can bring that brush back to its point and maybe just taking some more dark shapes up into your line. So what I'm very aware is that I don't want to lose that line. I want that line to be there all the time. I want you to see that line. Just going to add a little bit of water just to soften those down a little bit. There we go. So the tree now is nice and done. Let's work our way across. It's nicely finished. We'll start again and we'll put another little dark here. Now you may have drawn your shrubs and bushes differently to mine. What I'm doing is I'm putting a darker mark against the linear marks that I put in. I will then clean my brush and I will just push that wash up, push it up. So we're catching some nice lights as we go along. I'll show you again. A dark against the line, I'll put a little bit dark here as well. It does seem a waste because I do clean my brush an awful lot, but I feel that it's worth it. You could use 2 brushes, of course. Now, let's continue with that, and let's maybe just darken our little church just a little bit. I'm going to carry on with these shrubs, just putting that dark value in. Cleaning my brush and just pushing that paint out. Suggest some more trees here, couldn't we? Just use that side of the brush technique again just to suggest that. We have got little windows and doorways to put in, but I think for now it's probably best for your washes to dry before you start to add those little finished details. Let's bring this wash down again here. A nice thick mixture. And let's imagine that this is the edge of a pathway or the grass. So we'll make it a little bit darker. I'm going to clean my brush and I'm going to pull that wash back, pulling that back. It'll connect with this wash because that wash is still wet. It just gives you that nice bit of oomph. There we go. Should do the same on the other side. Let's take that dark wash. It's almost kind of double cream consistency wash. Cleaning my brush and just pushing that wash. Notice I'm using this part of my brush as well to do that. Just pushing that wash back to blend in with the background wash. And now a little pathway now, look, it's starting to appear. That's nice, isn't it? I do feel we need some kind of shadow value or just a rough indication of something, a little path or stones or extra bits of grass, just to break that shape up a little bit as well. Now you can see my paper is absolutely soaking wet through. So yeah, again, it's time to let it dry again, isn't it? Before we start to put the big tree in and a few little details. Those of you who know me quite well now know that I like to do this. I like to spray with my spray bottle. Be very careful now because mine is extremely wet, but I'm just gonna give it one little spritz and maybe another one over here. You probably can't see that on the camera, but you'll see it clearly now when the painting is dry, that we've got lots of little kind of textures just appearing because we've spritzed it with the water. Some artists like to drop salt in there as well, or you can buy these liquids, can't you, to create a texture. But good old-fashioned water, it's not expensive and it does the job. Let's let that dry. Now it's time for some final darks. So just taking that paint again. I'm using my size 8, so I need quite a small brush. And just make sure that's dry. Just maybe popping in a couple of nice little darks here. A nice little dark perhaps underneath the eave of that building. Might be quite nice. It's your picture really, and you can make as many changes as you like. Remember, we're kind of going for an impression, aren't we? That darken this bit as well, just to show the church off. And remember as well that you've got little areas that were annoying you before, and actually now you think they're working quite well. I don't really need to fiddle with them too much. I added a little tree here, didn't I? So we'll just suggest that little far away tree. Maybe just another small suggestion here, only because I like to exploit the lights. So I'm putting that in so it shows off this lovely light on the church. I think we're probably ready to do the tree. I'm not sure whether adding more detail is going to enhance it in any way. There's a nice little post there, we could just kind of suggest that. Okay, tree. Most of it's already done. The work is already done. You've put that line down and that line is going nowhere. So all we need to do now is to think about the light hitting the side of the tree. So we're going to use a nice thick wash. And we're going to bring it all up through that trunk, maybe into some of those branches. Remembering that we're leaving a bit of a light on that tree. Clean brush. I can lift some paint away as well, make it a bit lighter. I might just give it a little dab in places. There we go. I'm going to put a little bit of the blue as well into just some of those little branches that are coming off, just the larger ones. You could also get your rigger out. Your rigger or your sword brush is quite good for this. And notice I'm taking those branches off the paper. Just because the paper ends here doesn't mean that your picture should end there. Make it look as though that tree is really growing out of that picture. So I've managed to keep the light here. Here, where I missed the sky, I just missed that little bit. I'm just going to push, just as a little distracting me a little, so I'm going to just put a little bit of wash into that just to hide it. You'll find as well, whatever colour you're using, you can see I'm kind of lifting paint away. This paper's lovely, it lifts beautifully, but some colours are stronger than others and will not lift properly. You're always going to get a stain, and I'm afraid the Prussian is one of them. I'll mention the rigger. I haven't actually put it onto the material list, but we could just, sorry, excuse me leaning over, just for those of you who haven't seen the rigger, I did use it in the last demonstration actually, but, sorry, the sword, this is the sword brush. It's very much like a rigger in that it's got a very thin edge to it, and it'll just allow us just to put in some of those little finer details. Again, always very much aware that I don't want to undo all the lovely work we did when we put the drawing in. We want to kind of enhance it, so just not doing too much. Maybe flick a few little shapes up here, maybe some longer shapes. You can do this with your size 8 or with your sword or with the rigger. Maybe pull some of those right up, that might be quite nice. And there you go. A very simple monochromatic study. I do these quite a lot, and they're not only a beautiful way of painting in its own right, I'll also come back to a kind of painting like this and think, okay, let's do a lovely colour version of this. And I've already done a lot of the work in the fact that I've left the lights, so I know I'm halfway there to producing the colour version because I know where my lights are and where my darks are as well. So it's worthwhile having a go. If you've enjoyed painting with me or even just watching, please do press the red subscribe button at the bottom and press the like button. That will be awfully nice of you, and happy painting and stay safe.